He was a morbidly obese surgeon destined for an operating table and an early death. Now he's a rebel MD who is fabulously fit and fighting to make America healthy again. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia.
Welcome, folks. It's the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast with Dr. Philip Ovadia. And today we've got a rare treat. It's not something that's never happened, but it happens seldom. We have a citizen as opposed to a healthcare professional. In other words, somebody that I can probably understand. Phil, introduce our guest.
Yeah, definitely. But this isn't any ordinary citizen, I'll say. We're real honored today to have Reed Davis with us. And Reed Davis, I'm going to say, was a citizen who chose to do something about a problem that he saw. Reed is the founder of the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition platform, and we'll get into kind of what that is. But I was introduced to his work a while ago and really excited to talk about how it fits into really the stay off my operating table philosophy, stay off any operating table philosophy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Reed so he can introduce himself to our audience, and then we'll jump right in.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm happy to be here, and I love the name of your podcast, and I've been helping people try to stay off the operating table for over 25 years. I started back in the last century, the end of it. I actually was in environmental law and conservation, and I was saving the whole planet. And I started to, all the environmental stuff going on. And I started thinking, what about people? What's it doing to me? So you can just save so many birds, trees, and air and bees and things. And I wondered about people. So I switched jobs really, and I went to work in the clinic. And I spent 10 years in that clinic running thousands of labs on thousands of people. All the sort of, at the time they were considered alternative. Now they're considered standard fare in functional medicine. But we worked with some of the real early pioneers and had a really incredibly busy office that I had sort of started working at. And it changed my life forever.
Let's kind of start with some basics. Many people, I think, have heard the term functional medicine, but may not really understand what that means. And so talk about, from your perspective, what functional medicine is, what functional practitioners do, and how that maybe jives or doesn't jive with, the more what we call the allopathic medical system.
Sure. It's a good thing. It's part of an evolution of standard medicine or allopathic medicine. I don't think it's fully evolved yet. When I started in 1999, I was in a truly alternative clinic, considered quackery. Okay, but no, we were not standard medicine. And it was all kinds of modalities, chiropractic, acupuncture, and nutrition and things like that. I saw that alternative go into, it kind of became what was called complementary, because it works. What we were doing worked, so it became kind of a complement to standard medicine. Then it became integrative. So integrative medicine was big. Now it's evolved into functional medicine because physicians have caught on to finding underlying causes and conditions, which is good. So again, the evolution of standard through, complementary, integrative, and what have you is not finished evolving because, well, there are physicians using functional lab work, which is what we specialize in and what I teach. They're still bound by standard of care, licensure, and all kinds of algorithms that work in that, the same as standard medicine. The exact same. They get paid the same way for the most part by insurance. So what your insurance covers is what you're going to get. The doctor might be and this is just my opinion, trying to lay some cards on the table here, that it hasn't finished evolving. And I have my own theories about finding underlying causes and conditions and what that should look like. And the freedom that a practitioner really needs to have to be able to, again, not be bound, if you will, to the diagnosis and treatment model, because that doesn't always work. And
So,
so I'd be happy to explain further.
yeah, I'm still not clear. So when you say functional medicine, you said diagnosis, the diagnostic and treatment model, and I guess that contrasts with the functional medicine model.
The functional medicine approach is to find underlying causes and conditions,
Which is not the
which is a good
what,
thing. That's
which
the
is not the
functional, that's
typical allopathic approach.
correct. Correct. Allopathy is about relieving symptoms. If you take pills, you might feel better. If the pills don't work, you get stronger pills. If the stronger pills don't work, you just cut the parts out. That's considered drugs and surgery, standard medicine. That's how it works. There's a lot of jokes about it, actually, which we could go to sometime. But so
I've probably told some of them.
the lady goes in.
Unfortunately, lots of the jokes are true.
Yeah, the lady goes in and says to the doctor, I had this pain down here near my abdomen, and they gave me some ovary pills pills for my ovaries, but eventually they just took my ovaries out, and doctor said, I'm sorry to hear that. What else is going on? She said, I had this other pain up here, and they gave me some gallbladder pills for a while, and then they didn't work, so they just took my gallbladder out. And the doctor says, wait, just don't tell those doctors that you get headaches. And, the drugs and surgery approach is sometimes required. If you get something really bad, you probably want to get it out. But the functional medicine approach is to try to find the underlying cause and condition before it gets to that point, and then allow the person to change something. What we use is epigenetic forces instead of drugs and surgery. So epigenetics are how you get things to function in your body the way you want to. It's not about your genes. It's about the influences on the genes from the environment, from everything, from your diet and your sleep and your exercise and all the different stressors and things like that. So the approach that I take, just to try to clarify, Jack, is similar to the functional medicine approach, but I don't call it medicine. We call it functional diagnostic nutrition. It's very functional. It's diagnostic in nature because we use labs and data, so it's data driven. And the N in nutrition, in FDN is nutrition because I'm a nutritionist. But it's also nurturing. So you can provide nutrition to everything, every cell, tissue, organ, and system in your body, even to your heart, soul, emotions. All these things need to be nurtured. So FDN, which is what I created in 2008, was a movement towards getting people to be responsible for their own health. So they didn't have to rely on doctors. If they were educated well enough on how things are using lab work, you get the data, then how do I fix it? Mrs. Smith would say. I say, it's not coming into the office that's going to fix anything. We can do chiropractic, acupuncture, all kinds of modalities. Lots of therapies and things, but it's what you do at home that matters. So I started in about 2000, sending people home with their home regimen. And that because I'd run the labs, I'd run the saliva testing, urine testing, stool testing, hair, and some blood work, of course. And when you get the data, then you can direct the kind of forces that need to come to bear on that person. They pretty much have lived themselves into their problems.
That's a good.
The downward spiral of
They have
today's
lived themselves into their problems.
it's bad habits. Or maybe you just don't know about what you're eating and breathing and drinking and the kind of stressors that are around that have a very negative effect and create chaos in your body. Pretty soon you don't feel so well. And by the way, you might even be told by a standard physician, nothing's wrong with you. Your blood work looks normal because it isn't looking at all of the data that's available, again, through these other testing mediums.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I was just going to say, let's talk a little bit about, those testing mediums. People, if they've gone to an allopathic doctor and they says, okay, my doctor checks blood work and maybe they get, CAT scans or imaging studies, isn't that looking for the root of my problem? And talk a little bit from your perspective about maybe where that might fall short and what other modalities maybe we need to be looking at.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because CT scans and there's other MR, the imaging, all kinds of things can be really useful when you have a medical condition. So kidney stones, or you got a bladder stone, or you have cysts, or all these kind of things that have manifested as part of that downward spiral that I originally talked about. And thank God they're there. Thank goodness we have our standard physicians who are good at identifying those things. But I think the difference would be for like with stones, can they be dissolved through proper therapies? Is there solutions you can take that would yourself to take control, or do you have to go get those things taken out through hard surgery or whatever it might be, radiation, and now there's steam therapy. There's lots of things that doctors can do to get rid of the stone, but I don't think you'd find them looking for the cause. Oh, they just happen. Can I do anything with my diet? No, you're just genetically predisposed. You're going to get kidney stones. Your dad had them, right? Yeah, my dad had them. You got them too. So there's a big difference in the outlook. And keep in mind that when I started, I came from a different field. It was very scientific. So I had some really good research and writing skills and things like that to bring to bear on people. So I had a lot to learn, but I had nothing to unlearn. Just in that sense, I just wasn't licensed to practice medicine and didn't want to. These people come into our office, have been to 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 doctors already and been told nothing's wrong with you, or here's your diagnosis. That's why I say we don't diagnose and treat anything specifically, because everyone's done enough of that. People come in with 4 diagnoses, 8 diagnoses. They're on 8, 9 medications, or things like that. They didn't want any more of that. And so I was plunked down in this situation where, Reed, you can't do any of that. You got to find out what's really wrong. And then what can they do to reverse it? That was my job. That was my mission. And it hasn't changed in all these years. And I spent 10 years with a lot of game people, thank goodness, who were willing to invest in this alternative laboratory work. Again, the saliva, urine, stool, and things like that, even hair analysis and stuff, other tissues. But so they were game. I ran thousands of labs on thousands of people. And what occurred, I had great mentorship for some of the lab directors, the geeks that work there. I mean, these scientists they don't care about diagnosing and treating. They don't have licenses either. They just really want to know what's really going on inside. And that's where functional medicine was born. And I was right there. But again, not being able to diagnose and treat was to my advantage. It was like, we don't want to do that. What's really wrong? I found out that the hormones are almost always involved. Remember, we're talking about people coming in, not with horns growing out of the side of their head, but with very common maladies and a lot had been told nothing's wrong with you. But they knew something was. What is it? And it gets pretty complicated, but I was there to simplify things. I was the patient educator. I had to run the labs, say, oh, look, your hormones are out of balance. Your cortisol, DHEA is out of whack. So you're in a catabolic state. Your body's breaking down. You're getting old before your time. And again, they'd been told nothing, or that it was just hypothyroidism. They needed pills. And I'm the first one that said, your body's breaking down. You're getting, and that's, you know what they said to me? That's how I feel. Okay, we're onto something. What other measurements can we get? From cortisol and DHEA, saliva testing, you look at the sex hormones. Yeah, progesterone and estrogen are out of balance, or for the men, testosterone. And women need that too, by the way. And on the same test, I worked with these lab guys to develop what else can we get from saliva. Now we have melatonin we take at noon. We have secretory AGA, which is part of your immune system. We have insulin you can look at. Now you're looking at all kinds of lifestyle and repair opportunities. What I call them are healing opportunities. And when you add in the other testing for digestion, for detoxification, liver function, of course, and oxidative stress, which there's different things to look at. We look at mucosal barriers, so we know if you have hyperpermeability.
Say that again.
Actually envision what's going on with the villi and the crypts, the spaces between. Are they making their juices the way they're supposed to? You can envision all of this stuff for a person. And every test I ever did with someone was relative to them. So everybody in our world, FDN, is a study of one. There's no cohorts. There's no, here, take this because 50,000 people took it and only 4 died.
We're not referencing anything in modern life. So given the history that you have, I've got 2 questions related. 20 years ago, when you were doing this, what was the most common root cause? And the follow-up question is, has it changed?
That is an excellent question, Jack. And I would say that the causal factors are common that we deal with, that affect the people who would come and see one of our practitioners. It's all stress related. Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine, said all disease begins in the gut. I would say no. Who might argue with Hippocrates? But I'm sorry, it's
you heard it here, folks. He's arguing with Hippocrates.
And it circles around to the gut so much that so gut is really common. The most common malady back then, the most overused and abused diagnosis was fibromyalgia. We thought it was a joke because people were coming in, my fibro. They had a lot of symptoms and, call it fibromyalgia. And there is such a thing, but we want to know what's really wrong. We found out their hormones were out of balance, their immune system was underactive or overactive, their digestion wasn't working, their detoxification systems weren't working, energy production on a cellular level was poor because of their diet and other factors, and their nervous system was out of balance. They were sympathetic dominant for the most part.
Okay, gotta explain that. Gotta explain what that means.
It's fight flight. They were in fight flight, constantly irritated by life and a lot of things, and it's very sort of holistic and all encompassing because there's a lot of different types of stress. But here's a couple of things I want to say about this without babbling, hopefully, is that chronic stress is ubiquitous. We're all under stress, right? We know that it's a stressful world, but it's not just emotional. It's emotional, yes, your boss, your wife, your kids, your money, your whatever it is, and you got the news, God forbid you watch it. And then you've got on top of it, even deeper sort of psycho-spiritual lack of purpose. People walk around, they have no reason for existing and they feel shitty and they wonder, no wonder. So there's all this kind of stress. But on top of that, you have what my main concern is, which is the physical abuse. I did every kind of sport, every kind of extreme sport. I did jujitsu till I was in my 60s. I'm in my 70s now. And I wrecked my body. I have neck and back and upper back, low back, shoulders, knees, pain. So that's the type of stress too, that your body responds exactly the same to as if you'd got punched in the face by somebody, your boss, or yelled at by your wife or whatever it is. So there's all this stress, psycho-spiritual, emotional, and then there's the physical aches and pains. You have car accidents. You never really resolved it, and what have you. On top of that, remember where I started with the environment?
Yeah.
That was my business. And I know how bad it is. There's thousands and thousands of chemicals that we're assaulted by. They've done studies of umbilical cords of babies, finding 300 different chemicals. They've also done autopsies on people who lived on a mountaintop where there's no pollution. Baloney. Same thing, 200 to 300 chemicals in people who live away from the city, away from, and so it's ubiquitous. And so you've got the mental, emotional, psycho-spiritual, you got the physical trauma, aches and pains, owies, and things like that. And then you've got this chemical assaults on us day in and day, 24 hours a day, everything from mold to, again, the chemicals. And then there's the biochemical stressors of what the toxins that our body makes. The mere metabolic processes produces waste. And if you're not properly detoxifying, then you throw that on the fire. So that was one thing I wanted to say about stress, and it's in your body. There's some natural ways to get rid of some of each of those things. I could tell you about all the different therapies, but the other thing is I could show you on paper. I could show you the data. I could show you an adrenal stress profile with the cortisol, DHA, your catabolic, therefore your sex hormones are out of balance. And that's how people feel. Yeah, my libido's gone. I can't build muscle. I have no energy. But, then the next thing is that with the catabolic state, your secretory IgA, which is juice in the gut that keeps you from getting diseases, everything goes down the pipes, right? We have this immunoglobulin there that fights infection. And it goes down. It lives in a little mucosal layer inside the gut. And that mucosal layer gets thin and has less secretory IgA. So what happens next? So that's your immune system. So hormone, immune. Then you get this dysbiosis, mild at first, then it gets a little stronger. That's a lack of good bacteria, which you have to have an abundance of to break down protein. So you chew your food and you swallow it, and your stomach further purifies it and starts breaking things down. But when it goes to your small intestine is when it really gets broken down and absorbed into the body through the villi or lacteals in the villi. And so that process is diminished when you have a dysbiosis. And when you have a dysbiosis, so you're not breaking down your proteins, it means you're not getting all the amino acids you need, which are the building blocks of everything in your body. And they're the parent of all your neurotransmitters. So now you could really feel like crap because your hormones are out of balance, you're tired and fatigued, and your immune system isn't working well, and you've got a dysbiosis. You're not bringing enough food, so you're kind of malnourished. And no wonder you feel like crap, but the standard medicine would be how do you feel? Heartburn, gas, indigestion, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, or the famous alternating constipation and diarrhea. So you take pills for it. There's stuff you could take, and you're not addressing the cause at all. You're not even thinking about the cause. You're not considering everything that's upstream from there. By the way, we're only at the midpoint because it just gets worse from there. And again, I could show you on paper the hormones, all the data, the secretory IgA, the dysbiosis shows up in a urine test. So does what comes next, which is there's a step in between, because if you have a dysbiosis, that's not enough good flora to bad flora ratio. So you have more of the sort of unwanted, unfriendly bugs than you have the good, friendly bugs.
Right.
Then there's a medical term, I call it bigger, badder bugs. So bigger, badder bugs can come along. Those are the parasites and real bacterial overgrowth, really unfriendly stuff, and funguses and viruses there too. And that develops some biofilms. So now you start getting these permeability issues. Remember that mucosal barrier has thinned out and it doesn't have enough of the secretory IgA in it. And so other bigger, badder bugs start living there, and they're excreting and all kinds of endotoxins and things. And it starts penetrating through into the inside, basically going into your liver. And it's a somewhat circuitous route, but that's what happens. So you get hyperpermeability, and now you got a congested liver. And the liver is just one of 5 main detoxifying organs. And if it's clogged up, we can show you on paper. This is what I was trying to get to, is I got all the measurements in the dominoes, and I can just show you why you feel so lousy and why just treating symptoms isn't going to help you one bit. You have to change your life. You have to change your lifestyle, including how you think about the whole thing. And if you didn't notice, I gave you hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system as our general intake. Those are the general healing opportunities. You could throw in oxidative stress, but that spells HIDEN. So that's hidden. That's why I remember it so well, because it's an easy acronym, and it's hidden. It's kind of cute. But now so what's, if you're Mrs. Smith and I just ran 5 labs and I'm going through all this stuff, it's overwhelming. I don't understand the
Sure.
downward spiral and the cascade and all the numbers and everything. I do, because it's what I do, and my practitioners that I teach, we all get it. But what do you tell Mrs. Smith? You explain the basics, and it explains exactly why she feels the way she does. And they're so thankful. Clients are so thankful when you explain to them why and everyone else has said, either there's nothing wrong with you, or it's that you have a parasite, or you have hypothyroidism, you've got IBD, they'll give a diagnosis and treat that, but they're really ignoring the entire downward spiral, or most of it, or enough of it that they're not getting better. And we follow and have people follow. 20 years ago, I started telling people what to do at home that would make the biggest difference in their life, and you don't even need to come in the office. They love me at the office, but that part they didn't like about me so much, because I would say, look, just go home, eat right, go to bed on time, exercise, reduce stress in every way that we can find it, and we help you find it. Parasites, bacteria, funguses, viruses, food sensitivities are huge. We can test for that stuff. And then take some supplements. Now, I don't have my own brand, but I know a lot about them, and I've developed some for other companies. That spells DRESS, DRES, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. You have HIDDEN, easy. Here's what's wrong with you. Here's how you fix it, DRESS, and isn't life wonderful?
So, from your perspective, why do you think the allopathic system has such a blind spot for this? Why does it remain hidden? I mean, I think back to medical school, and, I was taught to look at the blood work and, use that as part of our, figuring out the diagnosis, like you said. And then, depending on the diagnosis that you came up with, that would lead you down a treatment algorithm. And, we were taught to look at blood work. There were some urine tests. Maybe there were a few stool tests that, would come into play, but certainly, weren't taught to look at these systems you're talking about, the hormones, and, and the autonomic nervous system, and doing things like saliva testing and hair testing. And why do you think that kind of divide occurred in the first place? And I guess, what would your advice be to my allopathic colleagues out there about how they can start incorporating this into their management, into helping patients ultimately?
It's a really good question. And of course, physicians are taught by physicians who teach what they were taught 20 years ago. And so you have a lag, first of all, between what's available scientifically and what's being done in a general practitioner's office. But the first thing I would say is every single symptom, every single complaint has an underlying cause or causal factors. Now, I could complicate it a bit, but because I have a whole theory on that, why they gave up looking for the root cause. And a lot of physicians they just don't look because they know how to treat the disease. It's not their job. We don't know why. Idiopathic, is the biggest excuse in the world. But just really, if physicians would just realize that every single symptom or something has root causes, usually multiple, they're not easy to find. Some of them may not even be there anymore. Recent research from the University of California, San Diego says the original stressor, some causal factor, doesn't even have to be there anymore. So you can look for the root cause for a long time and not find it. So it might sound like there's some futility, but I have a solution. But we'll get to that. But the next thing is that vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, trace elements, and phytonutrients, in other words, everyone knows about protein, fat, and carbs, the macronutrients, and they're really important. And the micronutrients, the vitamins, minerals, and other things I just mentioned, they're really important too. And so physicians get taught that vitamin C prevents scurvy. and vitamin D prevents rickets, or whatever it is. So they get taught this sort of general idea that, yeah, they're good. That's good for you. We all know that some famous explorer, his sailors didn't get sick because he gave them all a spoonful of lime juice every day. So they got their vitamin C and they didn't get scurvy while all the other ships were getting scurvy. It's so much more than that. Nutrition is so much more interesting and valuable and critical than that. It's disease prevention. It's functionally really required to be a good human. And number one, all symptoms have a cause or causal factor. Two, nutrition is just the most important thing. You just couldn't overemphasize nutrition. Another thing that I noticed that could be improved upon is kind of whose test results are these? So physicians are trained to look at test results to go, look, and here that you got to get those numbers up and get these numbers down and things. What about who is that person? And I spent 10 years from 2008, 2018 as a clinical advisor for a laboratory, just part-time. I just really enjoyed it and they paid me pretty good. For a few hours a week, I would do clinical advising. So I get to talk to doctors, hundreds and hundreds of doctors, and they'd get on the phone to go over a test result. This is all new functional medicine. They're learning this new form of testing, and they would just want to know, what's the agent to use? What's the dosage, frequency, and duration? And I would, what do I give them? What do I put them on? And I would say, I'd frustrate the hell out of them and say, whose test results are these? I don't know. I don't have her file in front of me. What's her main complaint? It's something to do with hormones, I think. So they just didn't even know their client. That's the third thing, besides the underlying causal awareness, that nutrition is just the ultimate medicine, and that it matters whose test results these are. What's that person do for a living? I've been to physicians. I'm 70, so I've had a couple of things. I went and got checked out. I'm on Medicare, so you go to the person and they don't want to tell you anything. They refer you. And that person just wants to poke and prod and so doesn't even know what I do for a living. I shouldn't tell them either. They'd really hate me. So anyway, those three things could improve medicine a lot, and there's more. But yeah, knowing the person you're dealing with, it really matters. And so functional medicine is taking a really good stab at it. They're hiring health coaches. And if they're trained by me, they're going to be the best health coaches on the planet, because they're going to know not just how to health coach, discipline and scheduling and helping and being a good helper person. They're going to have the anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, the lab work, and they're going to know a thing or two about nutrition and all the other lifestyle factors. So we were kind of at hidden stressors and dysfunctions, and then the DRESS protocols, which empowers the person. I couldn't believe the patients in the office where I first started, who became my clients, were putting their health in someone else's hands. That just doesn't seem right to me right there. And when I first started being a practitioner, amazing things occurred. I can tell some quick stories. I had a lady who said she's very happy with our work. And she said, do you work with kids? So I'm raising 4 kids. I'm a football coach, part-time volunteer kind of thing, 15 years. Yeah, I work with kids. Why? They're trying to send my kid home from school because he's kind of misbehaving. And they said, if I don't put him on Ritalin, they're going to kick him out.
God.
And I said, do you think he has a Ritalin deficiency? Which she didn't think was very funny. She said, I'm serious. I don't want to put my kid on drugs. I said, was this a doctor at the school prescribing medication for you? No, it's the teacher and the principal telling her, put him on drugs or we're kicking him out. And I don't want to put him on drugs. And I said, honestly, I don't know if I could help or not, but let's do some testing. Found out all these things the kid was sensitive to, including some foods he was eating. Got him off the foods, got him going to bed on time, doing his homework at the right time, and a lot of lifestyle little things, but mostly those food sensitivities and some chemical sensitivities. So easy to run these labs. Anyone can do it. And I never even met the 9-year-old. Can you imagine putting a 9-year-old on drugs? Doctors would go, yeah, I put 4-year-olds on drugs and 3-year-olds on drugs. It's kind of weird to me. But within 3 weeks of this kid's new protocol that I just was to me so natural, just stuff everyone should do. The principal calls me, says, this kid, Mr. Davis, I track you down through Johnny's mom. He's not poking the other kids. He's not outbursting in class. He's actually paying attention and improving everything about him. And I'm like gleefully listening, kind of a little ego boost, and just but that reward you get from helping others and things like. And then he goes, "What'd you put him on?" Which, yeah, I'm glad you're laughing because I laugh too. I go, "Huh, okay, you want the magic pill, and there isn't one." So what we put him on was a cleaner, healthier system and lifestyle, and helped the mom a lot too, educating her.
So I don't want to be a pain in the neck, but I'm going to be a pain in the neck.
Yeah, please.
You didn't answer the question.
I don't know what. So you asked me about
what do you think happened? And we're just asking for your semi-educated opinion. What happened with allopathic medicine?
Yeah,
that they forgot about tracking down the root cause.
You could start with patent medicine. Go back to 1903 when Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors, we wouldn't be talking to each other like this if it wasn't for Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb and thousands of other wonderful things. But he made a mistake. One thing he said was the doctor of the future will prescribe no medicine, but will interest his patient in diet, care of the human frame, and things like that. The quote is very famous. And he was dead wrong. There was only 9 drug companies back then. There's about 26 drugs. Today, there are 1,500 drug companies and about 3,500 drugs. Don't fact check me because I might be exaggerating slightly. But he was wrong as wrong could be, one of the smartest guys on the planet. The doctor of the future, that was 1903, prescribing plenty and not interesting his patient in. So if you want to know what happened, I think it got really easy to just treat symptoms, and it's not so easy to get people to change their lifestyle. And so that's what doctors started to do. And then, obviously there's lots of research going on how to get rid of those symptoms. It's wonderful to be able to take a pill and you don't feel that way anymore, whatever it was. That's actually, as a matter of fact, in our world, there's nothing wrong with relief care. We just don't leave it there. Because most of the time you're just making something that was visible, your pain, your complaint, invisible. They don't have the complaint anymore. But are the underlying processes still downward spiraling? Oh, yes, they are. So that means you're going to need stronger pills. And we actually started here with, pills don't work, take stronger ones. If those don't work, cut the parts out. There's lots of ectomies going on. And I've seen, so I'm glad you reminded me of the question. I don't like talking about it.
I see that, but
I kind of don't, it's not my world. I'm not in the allopathic world. I think it's wonderful. If you're the victim of a drive-by shooting, thank God there's an emergency room you can go to and get patched up. If you get off a plane from West Africa, Jack, and your temperature's 105 and you're bleeding from your eyeballs, you're not going to call your nutritionist.
Yeah.
You're going to go for the best allopathic nutrition there is, and it's right here around the corner. And in most big cities, there's 10 of them. And you got all the big systems, and they are magnificent at that stuff. They will save your life. So we call that getting on the life preserver. You're drowning. You got to get out of the pool. You got to get the life preserver. Now you're kind of in our backyard. Now what could we do to help? And if it's gotten that bad, yeah, you need allopathy. We even have our own relief care. And there's a period of time when people come to us, if they're a real mess, they just want to feel better too. Same thing, they just want to feel better. And that's good. So there's all kinds of, plant medicine and things have been used for thousands of years that are relieve pain or more energy or support. So we use supplements to support systems like the adrenals or support digestion, and you can stimulate the immune system if you're going on a trip. Take some stuff. You could also probably more importantly with supplements is substituting for what's missing from food. Remember all those little pesky micronutrients, you can't get it all out of food anymore. They've ruined the soil and so on. So we substitute for what's missing in food. We can stimulate certain systems as needed. We can support weak systems. And then finally, there is such a thing as self-treatment. Parasites, bacteria, funguses, if they're not too bad, and they haven't caused any real pathology yet, you can chase that stuff away with botanicals. Really well researched. People spend their lives devoted to just parasites, for instance. And yeah, you can get rid of those little critters without patent medicine. The answer to your question is, I think patent medicine did a lot to move things in that direction. Not to mention the advances in, like you mentioned, the CT scan, testing, the diagnostic equipment. And there's a bunch of money in it. That never hurts a business.
So when functional diagnostic nutrition, as you said, and, maybe nutrition isn't only about what we eat, but what we eat is an important component of that. And so talk about your perspective on nutrition.
Sure.
Do you think there's, a right diet for everyone? Are there kind of overarching principles that people should be paying attention to? And then, what are some of the ways that maybe you figure out the nuances of what one person might need versus another?
I'll make some pretty bold statements on that note, because remember, our formula for success is DRESS, diet, rest, exercise, and they have to be individualized. And that's why we collect data. We do the lab testing. And for diet, we do what's called a metabolic typing test. Listeners could go to mtdiet.com and look it up. But food has no, generally any inherent quality other than as it relates to who's eating it. So again, just like whose lab test results are these? Whose diet is this? Because we have things that dictate what our macronutrient ratios should be, the protein, fat, and carbs. And, low carb is all the rage. And it really started with Dr. Atkins back around 1998 or 9 when he wrote the book, The Atkins Diet. So I went on it in 2000 and I loved it. A lot of meat, fat, I could eat bacon for breakfast. And yeah, you do get a lot of energy and you can feel great. But man, the next person feels like crap on it. And the next person might just say, I feel the same. And so diet has to be tailored to one's nutritional requirements, which are dictated by genetics. It'd be nice if we could, it's hard to do this, but you take your genetically sort of pure tribe, they take a tribe, the Bantu tribe in Africa. They're very strict on what they eat. It's what they can catch and kill in their neighborhood. It's what they can catch and kill in their neighborhood, in their tribal grounds area. And that includes plants and seeds and nuts and all the things which are scarce. So they eat a lot of meat and fat. They do fantastic on that. They're healthy. You look at their teeth, they're white. You look at their reproductive ability, they do just fine. You look at their skin, it's clear. Their eyes are clear and white. And so their skin is very dark, but they're just perfectly in tune with nature and the diet that was there for them for millennia, even more years than that, many millennia. Then you we could take the Eskimos, we could take the Quechuan Indians from the Andes Mountains in Peru and Chile and stuff like that. They eat corn and potatoes. They grew up on corn and potatoes. Their grandfather 500 times back grew up on corn and potatoes. So they're carb eaters and they do perfect on it. And they're strong, some of the strongest people. They walk up and down mountains all day, right? Not to be too, I'm just saying, they live above 8,000 feet. And they do really well on potato. They have a potato for every ailment. They have 400 species of potatoes. And there's like the village potato expert and kind of equivalent of a witch doctor kind of a thing. But they're very colorful people. They also eat, they have some domesticated animals and things like that. They do milk and stuff. But boy, they're carb types. So why is it that the Bantu would die on that diet and the Quechuan would die on the Bantu diet? It's because they have different oxidative rate. They produce energy at different rates and quality and quantities on a cellular level. And they need the fuel that fuels that type of genetics. So the Eskimo is another good example. How come they can live like on 95% fat protein? Because their oxidative rate is so fast that they have to have slow burning fuel to produce energy. Now, once a cell produces energy, do you think you have to teach it what it does with that energy? Not one bit. You know, there's innate intelligence. Cell knows what to do. It knows if it's a brain cell, muscle cell, bone cell, whatever. It needs to be fed the right fuel mixture so it can produce energy at the right rate, quality, and quantity. And that's called oxidate. We burn fuel through oxidation. It's a long, drawn out, very complicated process, and I hated that part of biochemistry. But the Krebs cycle, you know, and the citric acid cycle, these things that tell us that it's not the food, it's the person eating it. And this is why some people do so fantastic on the so-called ancestral diet, because they've kind of discovered what their ancestors ate in terms of protein, fat, and carb ratios. And it's the most popular ones are the high protein and fat. But there's they do terrible on that diet. Well, why? It's not the food, it's the person. Now I could do a whole nother part of this just on the micronutrients, because if you think about those Bantus, the seeds and whatever vegetables, vegetation, low-hanging fruit, and roots, a lot of roots out of the ground, those have minerals and vitamins based on the soil. And it hasn't changed in millions of years. So that's the kind of combination and quantities and interrelationships, the values there, the ratios there of the vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, trace elements, and phytonutrients. And the animals that they eat those things, or eat the animals that eat those things. So their macronutrient ratios are all set in stone. It's bred in their bones. Eat like this, grow up, be strong, be good, whatever it is they want to do and think is cool. It gives them peace, hopefully, and joy. And then so that those ratios, plus if it's homegrown from their soils with their proper amount of nutrients and things, then they'd be in pretty good shape. And so that's how it was supposed to be. Now, 12,000 years ago, we started migrating. You know, someone invented boats. You know, we started going on long walks and intermarrying. So today in America, it's hard to figure out which ancestral diet's right for me. You know, I'm German, Irish, and South African, or American Indian, or, you know, that what should I eat? The mtdiet.com test will tell you, because it figures out your oxidative rate. And there's another big factor that is just too much to go into. But your nervous system is important too, keeping that balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic, and it can do it with food. I got a book right here on my desk, Biochemical Individuality. This is the first edition, written in 1956, and I keep it on my desk because nothing changes in terms of biochemical individuality. The rules don't change.
So that takes us to the folks who are listening and thinking, okay, this makes
This guy's
sense.
a whack job. How do I stay away from him?
This makes sense. No, those guys already are left. What do I do next? How do I start getting myself evaluated, tested? What can I do myself?
Decide to take control. Decide you're going to get it back and you're going to understand. Decide you're going to learn and do whatever it takes. Because without a decision, nothing happens. If you're just going to think about it, all right, go think, all right, let us know, you know, what you're going to do. But if you can make a decision, hopefully you still have enough energy and wherewithal to make a decision to change something and start getting educated, you know. And I mean, we have some training materials, of course, and you guys do too. amazing stuff. But start getting educated on, I have to, before we sort of, I could give them the URL that would be our call to action for today. Go visit fdntraining.com/Dr. Philip. FDN is, functional diagnostics, fdntraining.com/Dr. Philip. So it will give you some free training, and we won't try to sell you anything unless you really bother us. And then, but we've been around.
Don't bother them or
We
they'll
help
try
people.
to sell you something.
It's our mission. We're here to help. But I have to say this because it's part of my sort of flagship understanding of the questions you ask, from all the way back to our inventor friend in 1903, Thomas Edison, to today. People are seeking, and they've been looking for what's this magic root cause, especially in alternative medicine. Root cause has been the mantra. I get to the root cause. Well, let me give you some news. There's always multiple causal factors. So there isn't one. And it could be really far removed from where you're manifesting the problem. Really far removed, way upstream. And here's the other thing, and you hear this almost nowhere else. These causal factors, all the causal factors, are having an effect on each other. And a lot of it's not singly measurable. And I'm saying it's not singly measurable. I run I teach lab work, and I'm telling you can't measure all that stuff. So you have to have a construct to follow, which is all these years, the construct we follow is, let's test hormones, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system, oxidative stress. So this idea of hidden, let's get some data, and then let's use that as a starting point, and then we'll apply the principles of healing in the dress that are inherent in DRESS. That's what heals. And understand too that the body wants to heal. Every cell in your body has an intelligence in it. It's trying to survive. I mean, survival is what cells do if they can, if they're not polluted and destroyed and all these things. So if they're fed, give them everything they need genetically to survive and remove everything that's working against them. Sounds simple, but so this idea of root cause, I just want to return to that. So there's all these healing opportunities, a whole constellation in every person that we meet, in every person. It's a study of one. So what are your healing opportunities? They're going to fall in that HIDDN somewhere, and then apply the principles. So instead of root cause, I use the word metabolic chaos. It really is kind of chaotic. And if you just pictured taking a handful of stones, 6 or 8 or 10, and throw them up into a real smooth pool of water, what would happen? You get 10 rings or 8 rings. Those rings would be causal factors, but they're going to go out and spread out. And pretty soon the whole surface, you can't tell which stone was thrown first. It's just a bunch of ripples. It's chaos. And that's what happens in your body. And so without a system of sorting out metabolic chaos hidden, it's going to be really hard to sort out. You're going to end up picking 1 or 2 things through a specialist. I'm here, gut specialist here, a hormone specialist here, and what have you. And it just doesn't perform as well as looking at everything that we can look at.
Makes sense to me.
All right, sign up at the next FDN event.
Well, we'll make sure that this contact information appears in the show notes, fdntraining.com/Dr. Philip. It'll be in the show notes.
Okay.
Phil, for somebody who's supposed to be a
Phil.
civilian, this guy sure knows his stuff.
Exactly.
I had to really pay attention to follow.
And that's why we were excited to have him on. And yeah, I think this, the way that I have now come to synthesize all of this is to recognize how, it's all part of taking care of, the person and trying to empower the person to, heal themselves. And that's a large part of the message that we talk about here. We talk about taking back control of your health. And Reed said there's roles for allopathic treatments, but there's also places that those treatments fall short. And, I think in these functional approaches, I've now come to understand, and this isn't something I always understood, but now I certainly understand and appreciate how they can work together. And
That's the key.
Exactly. Thank you, Reed. And, I hope for my colleagues out there listening to this, my allopathic colleagues out there listening to this, that we do become more open to incorporating this into the care of our patients.
Thank you very much for that. I would encourage anyone in the healing arts, to consider some of the things that I said with some openness, hopefully. And, it's really the purpose being served is the health and happiness and joy of our customers, if you want to let me put it that way.
Very much.
I think most people are in favor of health, happiness, and joy.
Except my ex-wife. I don't know that she's really into it that much. Totally kidding.
That's a totally another show. All right.
A new one now, so I don't worry about it anymore. All right. Sorry for cutting up so much, guys. I can't help myself.
That's okay.
Okay.
For Dr. Philip Ovadia and Reed Davis of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, this has been the Stay Off My Operating Table. We are glad you are here. Be sure to visit that site if you feel like you're ready to take your own health into your own hands and really make that decision. That's fdntraining.com/Dr. Philip, and that is in the show notes. And we will talk to you next time.
Chances are you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't need to change your life and get healthier. So take action right now. Book a call with Dr. Ovadia's team. One small step in the right direction is all it takes to get started. Contact us at ifixhearts.com/talk. That's ifixhearts.com/talk.